Hello. Today we're going to talk about data validation in PHP. Now, data validation is a very multifaceted conversation. A lot of data validation is done with JavaScript, can be done on many levels. I'm just going to show you some tips and tricks and suggestions for data validation in PHP. So, data validation is a technique that you use to ensure the integrity of data which was submitted. So this is a form. It's kind of a simple form. It's got two fields. You submit it or you clear it. There's kind of a lot of code on the background. Well, a lot for a short YouTube video, but I'm gonna have a look at that in a minute. So let's just go look at the code. So the code looks like this. I've got a big old block of PHP up here. This PHP is built to look at those form fields which were submitted and either process them or provide the user with some feedback. And that's what I mean by data validation. So this is very much about not only data validation, but also displaying helpful feedback to the user. There's many ways you can do it. I'm just going to show you one way to do this. And so down below my block of PHP is just all of my HTML. So I've got a valid HTML document down here. This is my form, right? I've got a couple fields. One of them is called name, one of them is called pass, and then I got a couple submit buttons. So in order to process this form, this name text area needs to be there, and this pass text box needs to be there. I know I said text area, I meant text box. Alright, so here's my general scheme. I apologize that this is kind of long and I'm not writing it by hand because that would just be an excessively long video. But basically, there's a couple techniques that I like to use, and one of them is I create a flag. A flag is just a Boolean. It represents, right, whether true or false. Either something is good or it's not. So I assume, I mean, you could initialize it to true or false. I'm just going to initialize it to true. So I'm going to assume unless I find some problems or I find something missing, then I'm just going to proceed as I want to. Now this variable right here, this is an output variable. This big block of PHP here, I'm looking at some things, I'm performing some logic checks, but ultimately what I'm doing is I'm creating a message which I'm going to go display down in the body of the document. So those are my two little kind of placeholder variables. Here I'm just defining some constants. This is a fake login page, so if you put in username Ken and pass, and your password is ABC, then you're going to be correct, otherwise you're not. It's a silly way to do things. You should certainly be using some kind of a database-driven structure or something, but it just is what it is. So here's what I do. So at the very minimal sense of data validation when you're processing a form is you've got a couple choices in terms of functions. I use isSet. Most people do use isSet. There's other functions you can use like empty, not empty, but more often than not people use isSet. Now what isSet does is it checks to see if something was passed with a variable with a name of name via the get method. So if you don't understand what that means down in my form I'm using the get method, and this input has a name of name. The other one has a name of pass, just to show you all the details you need to know. So this is basically saying, is there anything present passed via the get method that has a name of name? If there is, I want to create a little variable called name, and I want to assign that the value of whatever the heck was passed. Otherwise, I'm going to flip that flag to false. Now, so let's talk about the otherwise for a minute. That's the data validation part of this. So either that thing is here, and I get it, or it's not here, and I set that flag to false. We'll kind of flesh that out in a little bit here. So the next thing I do is I go and look at the password. Is the password there? If it is, I get it. Otherwise, I set that flag to false. Then down here, here's where the flag comes into play. So down here's where I do my logic check. I'm saying, did you write Ken for your username? Did you write pass for your password? Any other password username combination is going to be false. But so notice this is an if block which runs from here to, well, here to here. And notice how I've wrapped that in a larger if block, you call it a nested if, with this flag. So how this works is we assume that the flag's true, and if the username is there and the password is there, then neither one of these flags are going to be false, and that means it's going to remain true. So unless we detect that something's missing, we evaluate the password. If either the password or the username is missing, then we never even get to this check. So notice I'm using a flag to kind of cut off certain chunks of the code. So like, don't even go to line 24 if line 23 is not true. So that is how that works. Let me show you how to make this a little bit more functional. So I'm going to save that. Let me load up the page and kind of show you how it behaves. So I refresh, and I put in can, and I put in what did I do, ABC, or is that what I did, or did I do 1 2 3? I don't know. All right, I got problems. I got a bad password. Let's figure that out. So I do can, and I think it was 1 2 3 actually. So bad username, password. Let's go figure out. And so I'm getting a warning on line 24. So I made a silly mistake. So the mistake you notice when I had pass down here, when I was doing the check for the password, remember pass was a constant? Constants don't have dollar signs in front of them, so it was an unrecognized variable. So this should now work. Sorry for the little detour, but then again, I don't mind making detours because I think you getting a chance to see that everyone makes mistakes and how to fix them is good. I keep forgetting the password, and I also keep forgetting to do an uppercase can. I don't remember if it was ABC or if it was 1 2 3. All right, I think it was ABC. Sorry, I didn't mean to spend 45 seconds on this. Nice login. All right, so I'm getting these messages here. So let's talk about how to improve those messages. So in a sense, that's validation, but I want to show you how to make friendly messages. So let's improve our output message here. So right now it just kind of says good login, bad login, and what was really weird was that form was still displayed. So let's do a couple things we can to make this a little more user-friendly. So remember this output variable? Well, let's use it. So I'll say out equals missing username. I don't know how you'd get in that situation, but that's more accurate. I'm also going to put a space after it. And then I'm going to head down to the password, and I'll say out equals missing password. So notice I'm actually giving a descriptive error message now. So very helpful, because there's nothing more frustrating than submitting a form and you don't know what you did wrong. Everyone's been there, and this is what you can do to stop that from happening. So instead of just saying, hey, you're missing something, why don't you tell the user what they're missing? This is going to look really weird because it's going to be in an H1, but also, so the way this is saying, so it's going to say, if you're missing the username, it's going to say missing username. If you're missing the password, it's going to say missing password. But what if you're missing both? So a good way to do that was, instead of how about just an assignment operator, let's do a concatenation operator, which is dot equals. Or you should remember that this is called a combined operator. It's logically the same as doing this, like that, right? So it's concatenation. And if you just want to concatenate onto something, dot equals is your friend. So it starts off as nothing. If this happens to be the case, it concatenates missing username onto it. If you're missing both of them, it's going to say missing username and missing password. And I think I spit this out down here in an H2. So notice I've got a little PHP block down here, and this PHP block is saying, hey, this is where the feedback goes. So let me show you how that works, just to make a little bit better experience here. So if everything's good, password password ABC, username Ken, I get nice login. However, if I do something super weird like this, you see how you get the feedback. Right, should that be above the form or below the form? Right, that's not the subject of this video, probably above the form. Let me show you the other thing that I think is worth addressing. How about that situation where you get everything right? Right, Ken, ABC, I log in. It seems weird to have the login form displayed after I'm correct, so let me show you how you would stop that. And I'm going to show you kind of a nice way to save yourself some code, but it's kind of hard to look at. So what I would do is I'd realize, hey, this form should only be displayed if that variable is set to false, right? If you logged in correctly, why would you have a login screen? So how you can handle that would be like this. So I'm going to break into PHP. Oops, forgot my question mark. Still in a sling, not that easy to type. And so I'm going to show you the way that I would do this. So opening and closing PHP tag, and so I'm going to say if that variable is called flag is equal to true, then I open up a curly brace. Now notice all this stuff is just raw, pure HTML. So this is going to freak you out the first time you see it. It freaks everyone out, and that's okay. So I open up a curly brace here, and I could go down below the form break back into PHP and out, and literally just have a curly brace. That seems really weird, right? I've got an opening curly brace here, which ends here. Well, in the event that you've got a big chunk of HTML, well, you can do this. The alternative is you have a giant echo, which is not any prettier. So that is definitely allowed. So only show this form if that variable is false. I know, I just realized what I wrote a second ago. I save that. I head back to my page. I refresh, and now I just get nice login. And actually, that nice login, where's that coming from? That's a pretty cheesy little message. Instead of echoing the nice login right here, what I should probably do is set that to my output message. I act like I'm concatenating it, and also notice this echo right here. So this is kind of an important point that I'm showing you. I've seen a lot of people, and I've done it myself, honestly, where you are up in this logical chunk of PHP, which is at the top of your document. You should not spit out HTML right there. So there really shouldn't be echoes out here. You should think of it more as, this is the area in my code where I'm creating a variable which is going to be displayed lower, as opposed to displaying things up here. Because if you think about the way that it works, you're literally having HTML spit out on the page before the doc type, and that's definitely not valid. A much better approach is to handle all of your output messages up at the top and just spit them out on demand. So let me save that. Let me show you the final product. I'm sorry this video went longer than I wanted it to. I also kind of knew that it would. So now that's an H2. Let me do something wrong, like that, and I get, oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that. So notice when I get the username and password wrong, my form now doesn't display. So that should be handled as, that's this case right here, and so I guess I should flip my flag to false, which is a weird thing. It seems logically weird to me, but you remember, it's the presence of this flag being either true or false that determines whether the form's there. So I need yet a third way to get the form to display. So if you're missing something, display the form. If your password is bad, display the form, and that should be pretty functional. And so notice that this ended up being somewhat elaborate, and as I stated early in the video, there's no wrong or right way. There's wrong ways to validate data, but there's not necessarily like a definitive way to do so. So what we've created here is a script which is capable of processing the data if it is there, and if the data is not there, it prompts the user for the data. So remember, this is just an exercise in checking for the presence of variables, checking the values of a couple variables, and displaying appropriate feedback as necessary. Another thing that I mentioned early in the video was that a lot of this validation is probably better done on the front end with JavaScript, but PHP validation on the back end is important because it's reliable, and maybe you'll get a better feel for what that means at some point, whereas JavaScript isn't 100% reliable. It can get blocked in a browser and such. So this is a good tool. It's a little bit clunky, as you saw, but this is an example of validating data and displaying nice messages to the user using PHP. Thanks for watching.